Hello and welcome to the She is Courageous podcast, your weekly reminder that courage comes before confidence and mindset is where it starts. I'm Shelley Bosworth, business mindset coach, helping women to stop holding themselves back and start showing up boldly in business, work, and of course life. This podcast is your nudge to ditch the self-doubt, quieten the overthinking, and take action that builds real confidence. Because she is courageous and she is you. Hello and welcome back to the She is Courageous podcast. Okay, to start this episode, I want to ask you something. I want you to think about a decision that you are perhaps sitting on at the moment, one that you know you need to make, something that you've probably been circling for longer than you care to admit to anyone, let alone to yourself. Now, in your business, maybe it's a decision around hiring someone or letting someone go. Maybe it's about pricing, whether that's putting price increases in, whether it's looking at things because something's not working. Maybe it's an offer you're not enjoying anymore and you know that something needs to change. A decision needs to be made. More broadly in life, it might be, a conversation you need to have that you keep putting off, or a direction you need to commit to because you're flitting, or maybe it's as simple, I say simple, or maybe it's a boundary you need to draw. Whatever it is, I want you to think about where you are sitting on a decision, where you are in the space that a decision needs to be made, and why you haven't made the decision to move forward. Why have you not made that decision yet? Now, I want to be really clear about what I mean by this in terms of decisions. This isn't just things on a to-do list. These are real decisions that require you to choose, to commit, to make a move that requires a bit more of you. Not, I need to do something about that and it's on the list and I'll get to it. This is like genuinely real decisions. Because what I want to talk about today is when we've got these decisions to make, and maybe the answer to the question of why have you not made that decision yet is something like, I need more information. I'm not quite ready. I just want to think it through a bit more. Because if that's the answer to the question, stay with me. Rarely is being stuck on a decision actually about information. That's what today is about. And it has nothing to do with how intelligent, experienced, or capable you are, even if you're telling yourself it does. But it does have everything to do with what growth does to the way we process choice. So today's is a little bit different. The episode is You Used to Be Decisive. What changed? So I want to talk about decision making today, specifically why, as we grow in our businesses, in our lives, as we achieve more, as our businesses grow or our careers grow, we take on more responsibility in whatever form that is, and decision making gets harder. So I want to talk about why decision making gets harder the more successful we become. And of course, like always, what can you actually do about it? Something that doesn't get talked about enough is the skill of decision making. It's not a fixed personality trait. I want to be really clear about that, okay? I think it is a skill, but it's a skill anyone can learn. I just want to put that out there. It is not something you have or you do not have. And yet too many people tell themselves, I'm just not very good at making decisions. Like it is a personality trait. The ability to make good decisions clearly and with confidence is something that changes depending on what is happening around you. It depends on the pressure you're under, the complexity of what you're dealing with, how much is at stake, how many decisions you are being asked or trying to make at the same time. It is not a skill that you either have or you don't have, that you're either good at or not good at. And the version of you who maybe you think was sharp and instinctive in her decision making a few years ago hasn't lost that ability. She is very likely simply operating in a very, very different environment now. And that changes everything. You've changed, your situations have changed, so your decision making will change too, or your ability to make decisions will likely have changed too. You have not become less decisive. You've probably become more aware. And awareness on its own, without a way to cut through, does not produce clarity. I say all the time, awareness is the first step of change. And people roll their eyes, giggle a little bit, particularly my clients, because they know I say it so often. But it's not enough on its own. And in this situation, in decision making, you may have become more aware of more things. That awareness doesn't produce clarity when it comes to decision making. It can produce absolute paralysis, and that is what today is about. Now, you may or may not have heard of something called the paradox of choice. And if you haven't, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to explain it because it's really relevant to what we're talking about today. The basic idea of the paradox of choice is that more options do not make us freer or happier. So the very thing that we are all, I say we are all, like pretty much everyone seems to be striving for, freedom, happiness, more choices, more possibilities, actually makes us more anxious, more indecisive, and less satisfied with whatever we eventually choose. Now, this paradox of choice, it's a real thing, by the way. There's books about it, articles, all kinds. It was first noticed in everyday situations. Things like how you go to a supermarket and there are, who knows the number? There's 40 types of jam. I think I read somewhere there's I don't even know now actually, but there's just Colgate Colgate toothpaste, for example. There's 25 versions of Colgate toothpaste. There's probably more. Don't come at me for the absolute numbers. The point is that this was all about evolution, and it was thought that more choice is better. But what actually happens, and did happen, is that people then get to a place where they can't choose. Or they do choose and they start second guessing themselves, wondering if they've picked the right one. You can see how this starts happening, right? If you think about when you go into a supermarket these days, it's not as simple as buy toothpaste. There are so many choices of brand, so many versions in a brand of different types of toothpaste that do different types of thing. Now scale that kind of choice situation into your business, your career. When we're early on in our journeys, there are fewer options. We're not as aware of all the options, quite frankly. You make a decision and you move, because there's a wonderful phrase in there, you don't know what you don't know. I often say when I started my business, I operated in blind naivety for the first part of it, the first good year or so. You simply don't have the resources, the experience, or the visibility to generate 10 different versions of an answer to each question you have. So you just kind of pick one and go. Now, I know I make that sound simpler than it is. And if anyone's listening now who's in the early stages of running a business and going, really? I don't know where to start because there's so much choice. Yes, I know. And that's part of the problem of the world we live in now, because we are automatically faced with what everybody else is doing and all their choices. But generally speaking, early in our journeys of anything, be that business or a hobby or a skill, there are fewer options. As you grow your business, as you move through your career, as your capability, this is in life, as your capability, your network, your experience, your resources expand, the options start multiplying for everything. You see more routes to everything that you want to do. You understand more variables. And let's be honest, you've lived through enough to know that most decisions now have consequences you will not have anticipated previously. So as we get more and more successful, let's call it, as we grow in our businesses, as we do more to achieve more, decisions that should take minutes take weeks. And it's not because you've become indecisive. It is because you're experienced now, because you can see the complexities, because you can see options. And seeing the complexity without a way to cut through is what creates paralysis. And then what we do is we start naming the paralysis rather than getting to the root, which is actually about the decision-making situation. I love a bit of science, as we all know. I love a bit of neuroscience. So I want to talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you are in this moment of indecision because of options. Because understanding it changes how you can relate to it. And there's lots written about this. There are books you can read on this. But you don't need to, because I'm going to tell you what you actually need to know. And I'm going to try and keep this really simple. The part of your brain responsible for complex decision making, the part that weighs up options, thinks through the consequences, considers other people, is also the first part that is affected by stress and pressure. So the more that you are carrying, the less access you have to your clearest thinking. Right at the moment you need it most. You are probably making dozens of decisions every single day. Probably for other people, not just for yourself. Every single decision draws on the same resource. By the time you get to the decisions that actually matter, very often you're already depleted because you've made so many tiny little decisions that don't matter as much. Cognitively depleted. Not tired, not exhausted, I know we're all carrying that too, but cognitively depleted. And that is completely different to just being tired. You can feel physically absolutely fine and still be in decision fatigue. It's invisible, right? I mean, you know, I'm sure you've heard the phrase. That was actually quite, sounded very formal, didn't it? Decision fatigue. But haven't we all experienced decision fatigue? I've literally said to my husband, I just don't have anything left. I don't want to have to make a decision. Just decide for me. We've all experienced that. When you sit down, you know you need to make a decision, however small the decision might be, and you just go round and round, you can't. I mean, crikey, I'm now thinking about the amount of time that is spent going through the channels on TV, where I end up watching the same stuff over and over because I'm just like, I just can't decide. There's too much and my brain cannot process all of this choice. Now, the final piece of all of this, I'm still talking about the brain. The higher the stakes feel in a decision, the more your brain kind of activates a low-level threat response. And a brain in that state does not produce clear, confident decisions. What it does instead is work with hesitation and round the houses thinking. And that's when we find ourselves saying, I need more information. More and more information that never feels quite like it's enough. Because the stakes feel high, so we're trying to de-risk those stakes all the time. Any of this sounding familiar? Now let's be really clear, it does to me. This isn't me sitting here as someone who has nailed the art of decision making. Seriously, I can't even choose a TV program some nights. But this happens in my business too. Big decisions need making. And actually the stakes are high on those decisions. So what do? I seek to find more information because I think that will make it lower stakes. It doesn't. A decision is never just a decision though. That's the problem. The layer underneath all of this is what's really happening. Because the decision is never just a decision, it's a commitment. And a commitment means change. If we are needing to make a decision on something, it means we are seeking to do something, be something, have something different to the very moment we're in now. And that means committing to change. Change means something different, something becomes different. And different even when it's exactly what we say we want, even when we've been saying we want it for so long, that activates a very particular kind of fear. I see this all the time. Someone who genuinely knows what decision needs to be made, who if it was anyone else could tell that person in seconds. Honestly, if you were to ask them directly, she would tell you in moments what decision needs to be made, what the decision even is. But she's not making it. And when we dig into why, it's almost never about the decision itself. It's about what the decision leads to. Most of us know what we need to do. We don't do it because it's what that decision leads to next. If I hire the person, then what? Everything changes about how I lead my team. What about the impact on the other people? If I raise my prices, I might lose clients. What does that say about my value? If I commit to this direction, am I closing the door on other directions? What if I'm wrong? It's never about the decision. It's about what the decision leads to. And that means the decision feels dangerous, not because it's the wrong decision, not because you're not capable of making it, but because making it requires you to step into a version of your life you have not lived yet. It means stepping into doing something you probably haven't done yet. And even if you have, it was a different version of you. And I have said this so many times across the course of, I was going to say across the course of the podcast, but quite frankly, across the course of the last 6 years in this world, doing this work, your brain will always prefer the known over the unknown. We don't like uncertainty. Your brain is here to keep you safe. Safety is in the known, not the unknown. Even if the known is costing you far more than the unknown ever will. This is why we sit on decisions we already know the answers to. It's not confusion. It's not indecisiveness. It's protection. And it does get harder as you grow in your business, in your careers, as we move through life. Because the more you've built, the more there is potentially to lose. What's that saying? The higher you climb, the further you fall. Early on in our businesses, it can feel like a wrong decision is something you can recover from quite quickly because there's very little impact. If you're not making any money, making a small decision that's wrong isn't going to make a huge amount of difference to your income. But now, a wrong decision could impact everything you've worked for, could impact the team you're building, your reputation, your clients. I'm not helping right now, am I? But this is the point. Your brain knows that and is trying to protect you from that. But the key word is could, not will. It could impact. The more visible you are, the more decisions feel public. It's not just about the outcome anymore. It's about being seen in the outcome. It's being seen to have chosen to do something and what that choice says about you and what other people might think about it. The more experienced you are, the more evidence you have of things that can go wrong. By the way, you also have evidence of the things that can go right, but we don't pay attention to that, do we? What we do is we go, we've lived through enough to know decisions have unintended consequences. And oh my God, that's hard. Well, what if that's wisdom? What if that is wisdom rather than a stop sign? But wisdom without a way to cut through, wisdom without the awareness of what that could also be, tips into overcaution. And the one that nobody talks about, well, I suppose some people do, but we don't talk about it enough. The further you go, the further up you go, the further into your journey you go, the more you build, the more successful you are. I'm always very conscious of the word successful because I'm the first to say it means different things to different people. But the further you go, the fewer people around you who are likely at the same level, achieving the same things. You know, there is a reason that they say the percentages, and I'm not going to be able to quote them correctly, but, you know, they talk about top X percent. They talk about actually the percentage of entrepreneurs that make it past 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The further you go, the fewer people around you who are at the same level as you, which means fewer people that you can genuinely think through a decision with. Making big calls, big decisions alone, without someone who can challenge your thinking properly, without someone who's been through some version, that does make things harder. That loneliness can feel very real. Now, if you recognize yourself in any of that, if there is a decision you are currently working through, sitting on, not making, she says, or if your decision making has recently felt harder, heavier, slower than it used to, I just want to say it doesn't mean that's a sign you're not ready. It's certainly not saying you're not ready for the next level, you're not capable of the next level. I would say it's a sign you're already in it. I would say that's a sign that the pressure is real, the complexity is real, the stakes are real. You are responding entirely rationally to an environment that has genuinely become more demanding. Now, I won't get on my soapbox about the world we now live in. I'm simply saying the problem is not you. It is not your inability to make decisions that's the challenge here. The problem is that we don't talk about this bit. We don't get ready for that. Nobody tells you this is coming. And it's likely nobody's helped you know how to navigate it. So no, I don't have a brilliant decision-making matrix. I'm not going to give you a 5-step system. I'm trying to really simplify things this season. I want to bring to the forefront the things we're not talking enough about as we grow. I am stepping into my next level. I am sharing with you the things that I've really noticed in the last 6 to 9 months coming up for me. And I'm seeing it in my clients who are growing with me, some at the same level, some past me, some a few steps behind. But there is one shift that's truly helping me, helping my clients, and will help you if decision making has felt harder recently. Remember the title of this episode, You Used to Be Decisive, What Changed? If you feel like you used to be able to make decisions far easier and somewhere along the line it's just got more difficult, that's what this is all about. And here is what will help. Here's the shift. Separate the decision from the fear of the decision. I'm going to say that again. Separate the decision from the fear of the decision. When you are going round in circles on a decision, going over it, gathering more information, asking more people, putting off making the decision, you have fused two things together that are not the same thing. The decision itself and the fear of what the decision leads to. Whilst those two things are fused together, you cannot think clearly about either of them. So here's what you have to do. When you notice you are stuck, you ask yourself two separate questions. First, what is the actual decision in front of me? Stripped of everything else. Not the consequences, not the what ifs, not what it means about me or my future. Just the decision itself, as plainly as I can state it. What is the actual decision in front of me? And then move to the second question, which is still not what ifs and consequences. It is, what am I actually afraid of here? Not the surface answer, the real one. What is the change this decision leads to that I am trying to protect myself from? Because that is normal. If you can separate those two questions, everything shifts. The decision itself becomes much simpler. It's the fear that's making it complex. And once you can see the fear clearly, name it, look at it, acknowledge it as a reasonable response to a real thing, and it loses some of its power. You will rarely make perfect decisions. Nobody makes perfect decisions, despite what you think you're seeing. But you will stop letting the fear of imperfect decisions keep you from making decisions at all. And at this level, at the level you are now at, as you move to the next level, staying still because a decision feels hard is absolutely costing you more than making a good enough decision and moving. So that is today's episode, why your decision making feels hard. And if you found yourself in this episode, and I think a lot of you will, if you found yourself nodding, saying yes, thinking, oh my God, that is me, I want to challenge you to just do one thing. Identify the decision you have been sitting on and ask those two questions. Separate the decision from the fear of the decision and see what becomes clear. Now, if you know someone who needs to hear what I've just had to say about decision making, please share it with them, or share it on your socials and give me a tag, or even better, drop me a message and tell me about the decision that you have been sitting on and how separating the decision from the fear of what the decision is leading to helped you. And I will see you next week on the She is Courageous podcast.